The timestamp reads 2:47 p.m. September 15th, 2016. Sarah Mitchell's face fills the phone screen. Wind-tousled auburn hair, hiking boots planted firmly on granite, the vast expanse of Mount Rainier's wilderness stretching endlessly behind her. Her smile is genuine, carefree, the kind of expression that belongs to someone who believes they'll be home for dinner. Sarah had been hiking these trails since she was 12 years old. At 28, she knew every switchback, every hidden waterfall, every place where the afternoon light painted the Douglas firs gold. Her parents had taught her to read weather patterns, to respect the mountain's moods, to always leave a detailed itinerary. She was methodical about safety, almost obsessively so. But mountains don't care about preparation. The photo captures more than just Sarah's face. In the background, storm clouds are gathering along the western ridge, dark, heavy formations that hadn't been in the morning forecast. The temperature was dropping. What had started as a perfect day for a solo hike was shifting into something more sinister. Sarah's GPS tracker shows she was 3 miles deep on the Cascade Ridge Trail, well within her comfort zone. She'd planned a 12-mile loop, nothing ambitious, nothing dangerous. The trail was well-marked, frequented by other hikers. She'd done this exact route dozens of times before. Her phone would ping the cell tower twice more after that photo, once at 3:15 p.m., then again at 3:33 p.m., both signals coming from deeper along the trail. Then nothing. Complete digital silence. The final image on Sarah's phone, discovered later by investigators, shows something unsettling. It's slightly blurred, taken at 3:31 p.m., just 2 minutes before her last cell tower ping. The photo appears to be accidental, a shot of the ground, her hiking boots visible at the bottom of the frame. But in the upper corner, barely noticeable, is the shadow of another person. Sarah's family would study that shadow for years. Investigators would enhance it, analyze it, debate its significance. Some dismissed it as a trick of light between the trees. Others saw something more deliberate, more human. The weather turned violent that evening. What began as light drizzle became a torrential downpour, washing away footprints, scent trails, any trace of where Sarah might have gone. By the time search teams mobilized the next morning, the mountain had swallowed her story completely. What happened in those 46 minutes between Sarah's final selfie and her last cell ping would haunt the Pacific Northwest for 7 long years. Her cheerful face would become the centerpiece of missing person flyers, the focal point of countless search efforts, the symbol of a mystery that seemed impossible to solve. Sarah had no idea that this smiling selfie at 2:47 p.m. would become the centerpiece of a mystery that would consume an entire town for 7 years. Sarah Mitchell lived her life in careful increments. Friends described her as the type of person who color-coded her calendar, who researched restaurants before trying them, who never left home without telling someone exactly where she was going. This methodical nature made her disappearance all the more confounding. She was like clockwork, her best friend Emma Valdez would later tell investigators. Sarah didn't do spontaneous. She planned everything down to the minute. That Thursday morning had unfolded with Sarah's typical precision. She'd checked the weather forecast twice. Clear skies with a 20% chance of afternoon showers. She'd packed her day pack with military efficiency. 2 liters of water, energy bars, first aid kit, emergency whistle, headlamp, rain jacket. Her plan was simple. Start the Cascade Ridge Trail at 11 a.m., complete the loop by 5 p.m., home by 6:30 for dinner with her parents. Sarah worked as a geology lab technician at the University of Washington, a job that fed her love of the outdoors and her fascination with the forces that shaped the landscape. Colleagues knew her as someone who approached both work and wilderness with the same careful attention to detail. She didn't take unnecessary risks. Her parents, Robert and Linda Mitchell, had raised their only daughter to be independent but cautious. They'd moved to the small town of Packwood specifically for access to the mountains, and Sarah had spent her childhood learning wilderness skills. She could read topographical maps, use a compass, identify edible plants. She carried bear spray and knew how to use it. The morning of September 15th started like countless others. Sarah kissed her parents goodbye, reminded them of her planned route, and promised to call when she reached the trailhead. That call came at 10:52 a.m. She was running 8 minutes ahead of schedule, she said, and the parking lot was nearly empty. Perfect conditions for a peaceful solo hike. Her father would replay that brief conversation thousands of times over the coming years. Sarah's voice had been light, happy. She'd mentioned seeing a family of deer near the restrooms. Nothing seemed wrong. As the afternoon stretched into evening, Linda Mitchell found herself watching the clock with increasing anxiety. Sarah should have called by 6 p.m. to confirm she was off the mountain. By 6:30, Linda was pacing. By 7 o'clock, she was calling Sarah's cell phone repeatedly, each call going straight to voicemail. Robert tried to remain calm. Maybe Sarah had encountered other hikers, gotten caught up in conversation. Maybe her phone battery had died. Maybe she decided to extend her hike slightly, take advantage of the good weather. These were all reasonable explanations. But as darkness fell and Sarah's empty bed told its silent story, reasonable explanations began to feel like desperate hope. By midnight, Sarah's empty bed told a story no one wanted to believe. The call to 911 came at 5:47 a.m. on September 16th. Linda Mitchell's voice was steady but strained. Her daughter was 12 hours overdue. Completely out of character. Please send help immediately. The dispatcher, experienced with missing hiker reports, began the careful process of gathering details while simultaneously alerting the Pierce County Sheriff's Office and Mount Rainier National Park Rangers. Within an hour, the machinery of search and rescue was grinding into motion. Ranger Tom Hendricks had been working Mount Rainier for 15 years. He'd seen seasoned hikers make fatal errors, watched weather systems trap experienced mountaineers, coordinated searches for everyone from lost children to professional climbers. But something about Sarah Mitchell's disappearance felt different from the start. She didn't fit the profile, Hendricks would later tell investigators. Wrong time of year for hypothermia, wrong trail for getting lost, wrong experience level for basic mistakes. It didn't add up. The first search helicopter launched at dawn, its rotors cutting through morning mist as it swept the Cascade Ridge Trail from above. The pilot, Jake Morrison, methodically followed the known route, scanning for any sign of bright colors against the muted greens and browns of the forest. Sarah had been wearing a red jacket according to her parents, exactly the kind of high-visibility gear that should be easy to spot from the air. Ground teams started from the trailhead where Sarah's Honda Civic still sat in the parking lot, keys locked inside as planned, nothing disturbed. 2 bloodhounds picked up her scent immediately, leading handlers confidently along the established trail. For the first 3 miles, everything seemed normal. Sarah had clearly walked this route, her scent strong and fresh. Then, inexplicably, the trail went cold. The dogs just stopped, recalled handler Maria Santos. They circled the same spot for 20 minutes, whining, confused. It was like Sarah had just vanished into thin air right there. The location where the scent trail ended would become ground zero for the search effort. An unremarkable section of trail 3.5 miles from the parking lot, surrounded by thick forest with no obvious hazards. No cliffs to fall from, no streams to fall into, no immediate dangers that might explain a sudden disappearance. Additional helicopters joined the search as word spread through the tight-knit hiking community. Volunteers poured in from Seattle, Tacoma, and surrounding towns. By the third day, more than 200 people were combing the wilderness, calling Sarah's name until their voices were hoarse, checking every game trail, every ravine, every possible hiding place within a 10-mile radius of the last known location. Search coordinators established an incident command post in the trailhead parking lot. Maps covered every surface, marked with grid patterns, search zones, cleared areas. Red pins showed places teams had looked. Blue pins marked areas where evidence might be found. The map filled with pins, but Sarah remained invisible. On the 4th day, search dogs from 3 different agencies were brought in for a fresh attempt. Each dog led handlers to the same approximate location where the scent trail ended. Then nothing. As if Sarah had simply been lifted from the earth. After 72 hours, it was as if Sarah had simply vanished into thin air. Detective Ray Molina had worked missing persons cases for Pierce County for 8 years, but Sarah Mitchell's disappearance defied every pattern he knew. Hikers who got lost were usually found within a few days, either safe or as victims of exposure. Hikers who fell typically left evidence, disturbed vegetation, broken branches, some sign of trauma. Hikers who encountered predators, whether animal or human, left traces behind. Sarah had left nothing. The initial theory focused on wildlife. Mount Rainier was home to black bears, mountain lions, and the occasional aggressive elk. But large predator attacks on humans were incredibly rare, and they almost always left significant evidence behind. The forensics team found no blood, no torn clothing, No signs of struggle anywhere along the trail. It would have been almost impossible for an animal to kill Sarah and completely remove her body without leaving trace evidence, explained forensic investigator Dr. Patricia Wong. We're talking about hundreds of pounds of biomass. Something that size doesn't just disappear. The second theory was accidental death, a fall into hidden terrain, perhaps a concealed crevasse or an unmarked mine shaft. Search teams spent weeks rappelling into every possible hazard within 5 miles of the trail. Technical rescue specialists checked caves, examined cliff faces, even brought in ground-penetrating radar to scan for hidden voids underground. They found nothing. Detective Molina began exploring darker possibilities. Could Sarah have encountered another hiker with malicious intent? The timeline made this scenario compelling. Sarah's last cell ping had come from an area popular with day hikers, a place where encounters with strangers would be normal, expected even. Investigators pulled cell tower data for September 15th, identifying every phone that had pinged in the area during the relevant time window. They interviewed dozens of hikers who had been on nearby trails. Most remembered seeing other people, but descriptions were vague, unreliable. Mountain encounters tend to be brief, a wave, a nod, maybe a quick conversation about trail conditions. One witness stood out. Margaret Chun, a Seattle teacher, clearly remembered passing a young woman matching Sarah's description around 3:20 p.m. But Margaret also remembered seeing a man following about 50 yards behind, someone who seemed to be deliberately maintaining distance while staying on the same route. He wasn't hiking with her, Margaret told investigators. But he wasn't not hiking with her either, if that makes sense. Something felt off about it. Margaret's description of the man was frustratingly generic. Medium height, dark clothing, baseball cap, pulled low. Someone forgettable, anonymous, the kind of person who could blend into any crowd. Despite extensive follow-up investigation, this mysterious figure was never identified. As weeks turned to months, the theories grew more desperate. Had Sarah staged her own disappearance? Unlikely given her stable life and close family relationships. Had she suffered some kind of medical emergency that caused her to wander off trail in confusion? Possible, but Sarah had no history of health issues. The most haunting theory was the simplest. Someone had killed Sarah Mitchell and hidden her body so well that even the most extensive search in Washington state history couldn't find it. Every lead seemed to dissolve like morning mist, leaving investigators with more questions than answers. Time moves differently when someone you love disappears. For Robert and Linda Mitchell, September 15th became a date that never truly ended, a wound that refused to heal, a question mark hanging over every birthday, holiday, and family gathering that followed. The first anniversary brought renewed media attention. Local news stations ran updates, fresh appeals for information. Search volunteers organized a memorial hike along the Cascade Ridge Trail, hundreds of people wearing red jackets in Sarah's honor. The gesture was beautiful and heartbreaking in equal measure. Linda Mitchell began leading these memorial hikes herself, convinced that familiarity with the terrain might reveal something professional searchers had missed. Every year, she would walk the same route her daughter had taken, studying every tree, every rock formation, every shadow that might hide a clue. "I know she's still up there," Linda would tell reporters. "I can feel her presence. She's waiting for us to find her." Detective Molina officially retired in 2019, but Sarah's case file remained on his home office desk. His successor, Detective Lisa Park, inherited not just paperwork but an obsession. The case had become legendary within law enforcement circles. The perfect disappearance, the impossible mystery. Over 7 years, the investigation generated over 1,200 pages of reports, hundreds of witness interviews, dozens of false leads that led nowhere. Psychics called claiming to have visions of Sarah's location. Amateur detectives posted elaborate theories on internet forums. None of it yielded useful information. The Mitchell family hired 3 different private investigators. They offered a $50,000 reward for information leading to Sarah's discovery. They consulted specialists in wilderness recovery, experts in criminal psychology, even practitioners of alternative search methods. The reward money went unclaimed. Sarah's disappearance changed the town of Packwood. Hiking groups became more cautious, more likely to travel in pairs. Parents held their children a little closer. The mountain that had always been a source of joy and recreation now carried in shadow of danger. The local high school dedicated their 2020 yearbook to Sarah's memory. She had volunteered as a geology tutor, helping struggling students understand earth science through hands-on field trips. Her legacy lived on in the dozens of young people she had inspired to love the natural world. But inspiration couldn't answer the fundamental question that haunted everyone who knew Sarah's story. Where had she gone? The case file grew thick with dead ends, but technological advances in search and rescue continued to evolve. Ground-penetrating radar became more sophisticated. Thermal imaging improved. Most significantly, drone technology advanced from expensive military equipment to affordable civilian tools capable of accessing terrain too dangerous for human searchers. In 2023, Detective Lisa Park made a decision that would change everything. She would restart the Sarah Mitchell investigation using every technological resource available, resources that hadn't existed 7 years earlier. The case file had grown thick with dead ends, but Sarah's mother still hiked that trail every year, hoping for a miracle. Detective Lisa Park approached cold cases with the methodical precision of a surgeon. Unlike her predecessor, who relied heavily on intuition and traditional investigation techniques, Park believed in the power of technology to reveal secrets that human eyes might miss. In January 2023, she made Sarah Mitchell's case her personal priority. 7 years is long enough, Park told her captain. We have tools now that didn't exist in 2016. It's time to look at this mountain with fresh eyes. The decision to deploy advanced drone technology wasn't made lightly. The department's budget was tight, and the specialized equipment required significant investment. But Park argued convincingly that Sarah's case had become a symbol. If they could solve this disappearance, it would demonstrate the power of persistence combined with technological innovation. The drone selected for the mission was a DJI Matrice 300, equipped with high-resolution cameras, thermal imaging, and LiDAR mapping capability. Unlike the limited helicopter searches of 2016, this drone could hover in tight spaces, examine areas beneath tree canopies, and generate detailed 3D maps of terrain that had never been properly surveyed. Operator Michael Torres brought 15 years of commercial drone experience to the search. He'd used similar technology for everything from real estate surveys to disaster response. But searching for human remains in dense wilderness presented unique challenges. The forest canopy is like a green roof, Torres explained. From above, everything looks the same. But modern LiDAR can penetrate through leaves and branches, creating detailed ground maps that show features invisible to traditional aerial photography. The systematic search began in March 2023, focusing on areas within a 2-mile radius of where Sarah's scent trail had ended. Torres flew methodical grid patterns, the drone's cameras capturing thousands of high-resolution images that would be analyzed frame by frame using specialized software. Weather conditions had to be perfect: minimal wind, clear visibility, stable atmospheric pressure. Torres could only fly for limited periods before battery limitations forced the drone to return to base. Progress was measured in small increments, cleared areas marked carefully on digital maps. For weeks, the drone revealed nothing unusual. Fallen logs that looked suspicious from above turned out to be natural forest debris. Dark patches that might indicate disturbed earth were simply seasonal variations in vegetation. Every promising lead dissolved under closer examination. Then, on April 18, 2023, the drone's path took it over a section of terrain that had been considered impossible to search thoroughly. A steep ravine filled with massive fallen trees, roughly 200 yards south of the main trail. Previous ground teams had dismissed this area as inaccessible. Anyone falling in would be immediately visible from above. But the LiDAR revealed something different. Beneath the canopy of fallen timber, the technology detected an unusual geometric pattern, straight lines and right angles that don't occur naturally in wilderness settings. Torres maneuvered the drone lower, using its thermal imaging camera to scan through the forest debris. At first, he saw nothing unusual. Then, at coordinates 47.2431, minus 121.1208, the thermal sensor detected a signature that made his blood run cold. The heat signature was faint but distinct, the outline of human remains, protected from weather and scavengers by the natural shelter of fallen trees. At coordinates 47.2431, minus 121.1208, the drone's camera captured something that would rewrite everything they thought they knew. The recovery operation began at dawn on April 20th, 2023. Detective Park assembled a team that included forensic specialists, crime scene investigators, and technical rescue personnel capable of safely accessing the treacherous terrain beneath the fallen timber. What they discovered changed everything. Sarah Mitchell's remains were found in a carefully constructed shelter, built from branches and forest debris in a location invisible from any hiking trail or aerial vantage point. This wasn't an accidental death scene. Someone had deliberately created a hiding place designed to conceal evidence permanently. Dr. Patricia Wong, the forensic pathologist who examined Sarah's remains, found evidence of blunt force trauma to the skull, injuries consistent with assault rather than accidental fall. More disturbing still, Sarah's personal effects were arranged around her body in a ritualistic pattern that suggested psychological disturbance on the part of her killer. This level of concealment required significant planning, Dr. Wong explained. The perpetrator had to drag the body roughly 200 yards through extremely difficult terrain, then spend considerable time constructing this hiding place. We're dealing with someone who was methodical, organized, and familiar with this specific area. The breakthrough came when investigators discovered Sarah's missing cell phone, hidden beneath her body and still containing data despite years of exposure to the elements. Digital forensics specialists were able to recover several photographs taken after Sarah's final selfie, images that captured her attacker's face with chilling clarity. The photos showed a struggle. Sarah had managed to activate her phone's camera during the attack, whether intentionally or accidentally. The images were blurred, fragmented, but facial recognition software was able to identify key features and compare them against criminal databases. The match came back within hours. Marcus Webb, 34, a local resident with a history of stalking and assault charges. Webb worked as a seasonal maintenance worker for the National Park Service, which gave him intimate knowledge of the trail system and access to areas most hikers never saw. Detective Park's team moved swiftly to locate Webb. They found him living in a cabin 12 miles from the search area, surrounded by newspaper clippings about Sarah's disappearance and disturbing journal entries that detailed his obsession with female hikers. Under interrogation, Webb initially denied involvement, but faced with photographic evidence from Sarah's phone and forensic proof linking him to the crime scene, his story began to crumble. Webb claimed the encounter had started as a casual conversation that got out of hand. He admitted to following Sarah deliberately, to confronting her in an isolated section of trail, to striking her when she tried to flee. The most chilling aspect of Webb's confession was his description of the months that followed. While search teams combed the mountain and Sarah's family held vigil, Webb had returned to the concealed grave site repeatedly, obsessively tending to his secret and monitoring the investigation's progress. He was hiding in plain sight, Detective Park realized, watching the searches, probably even participating in some of the volunteer efforts, getting some kind of twisted satisfaction from the fact that hundreds of people were looking for Sarah while only he knew where she was. Webb's detailed knowledge of the investigation suggested he had been following the case closely, possibly even attending some of the memorial hikes organized by Sarah's family. The thought that he had stood among the mourners, listening to their grief while concealing his guilt, added another layer of horror to an already devastating crime. The truth had been hidden just 200 yards from the main trail, waiting 7 years for technology to find what human eyes had missed. Marcus Webb's trial began in September 2023, exactly 7 years after Sarah Mitchell's disappearance. The courtroom was packed with family members, friends, search volunteers, and community members who had followed the case since the beginning. For many, seeing Webb finally face justice felt surreal after so many years of uncertainty. The prosecution presented overwhelming evidence. Sarah's recovered cell phone contained not just photos of her attacker, but GPS data proving Webb had been following her for over an hour before the confrontation. Forensic analysis of his home revealed detailed maps of the trail system marked with locations where he had observed female hikers over several years. Webb's defense attorney argued for a manslaughter charge rather than first-degree murder, claiming the killing hadn't been premeditated. But Webb's own journal entries, read aloud in court, painted a picture of escalating obsession and deliberate stalking that made premeditation undeniable. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. Marcus Webb was found guilty of first-degree murder and sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. Linda Mitchell addressed the court during the victim impact phase of sentencing. Her voice was steady as she described 7 years of sleepless nights, endless searching, and the particular torture of not knowing what had happened to her daughter. Sarah was a light in this world, Linda told the judge. She inspired young people to love science, to explore nature responsibly, to live with curiosity and compassion. Marcus Webb didn't just kill my daughter. He tried to erase her completely, but he failed. Sarah's memory will outlive his crime. The case's resolution led to significant changes in search and rescue protocols throughout Washington state. The success of drone technology in locating Sarah's remains sparked investment in similar equipment for other jurisdictions. The Sarah Mitchell Foundation, established by her parents, now provides funding for advanced search technology and wilderness safety education programs. Mount Rainier National Park installed new emergency communication systems along popular trails and established a buddy system recommendation for solo hikers. Sarah's story became part of wilderness safety education, taught not to frighten people away from nature, but to encourage smart precautions and community awareness. Detective Lisa Park received recognition for her innovative use of technology in solving the case, but she deflected credit to the team effort and technological advances that made the breakthrough possible. Sarah deserved to be found, Park said simply. Justice may have been delayed, but it wasn't denied. The Mitchell family continues to organize annual memorial hikes, but the tone has shifted from desperate searching to peaceful remembrance. The trail where Sarah died has become a place of healing rather than horror, marked with a simple memorial plaque that reads, "In memory of Sarah Mitchell, scientist, explorer, beloved daughter, 1988 to 2016." Webb's conviction brought closure to one of the Pacific Northwest's most haunting mysteries. But perhaps more importantly, it demonstrated that advancing technology and persistent investigation can ultimately triumph over even the most carefully concealed crimes. Sarah's story had ended not with silence, but with the voice of justice that would protect future hikers from the same fate.